Good morning. So your teacher asked me to talk to you a little bit about high altitude pulmonary edema. Said you were learning about it or read about it in a book. The reason why she asked me to talk to you briefly about it is because if you haven't noticed from the nose items or the tubing coming out of my face, is I recently contracted high altitude pulmonary edema, or more commonly known as Hape. And so I want to spend a little bit of time just talking a little bit about my experience with Hape and what I've gone through so far. For just a quick little bit of information on Hape, it stands for high altitude. Obviously, where I was at was 10 to 13,000 feet for quite a few days. And if you know anything about the altitude, when you're up at high altitude, one of the biggest things about it is you have less oxygen up there. Now, most of you live in St. Louis, so we've got a pretty abundant supply of oxygen down here. But up in Colorado, in the mountains, when you get higher, there's less oxygen, so your body has to work harder to get that oxygen. The longer you're up there and the more your body has to work, the less oxygen you start to get to your body. And pulmonary, that word actually deals with the lungs, so high altitude pulmonary edema. What ended up happening on my end is that in your lungs you have these little sacs, and as I continued to get less and less oxygen with a less amount of air, those sacs started filling up with fluid. Well, the longer I was up there, the longer it started filling up with fluid. And so because your lungs are really is the organ that brings oxygen to your body, your blood is what carries the oxygen through your body to all your different organs. Well, you can imagine if the supply of oxygen from your lungs to your blood decreases, there's less oxygen in your blood to get to your organs. So what ends up happening, excuse me, is you get fluid in your lungs, which is why I'm coughing right now, is because I have a significant amount of fluid still left in my lungs. And excuse me, as you talk more, the fluid starts to come up. Long story short, eventually I had very little oxygen left in my blood, and I started to get really sick, to the point where I started fading in and out of consciousness. Went to the hospital, and once I went to the hospital, the doctors had to start pumping a lot of oxygen into me. I had this big mask on my face. They just forced air into my lungs, so my body could start getting oxygen again. Now, after that, and I was at 10,000 feet, then they transported me back down to 5,000 feet, which was in Denver, and I was there for a few days until finally being able to make my way back to St. Louis. Now, the past couple of weeks, I've been sitting here at home on oxygen as my lungs are starting to recuperate, bringing tanks of oxygen around so I can still live a regular life. But as I continue moving forward, eventually I'm going to get better. Now, high altitude pulmonary edema, or Hape, it's one of the leading causes of death when it comes to high altitude or going up into the mountains. So if you get anything from this video, just be cognizant, be aware of this, because it's a serious condition. It's a serious disease, serious condition that you can contract up there due to the lack of oxygen, and you could end up like me on this tube for the next couple of weeks. So I'm just going to end this video. That's just a little quick excerpt of what I've gone through when it comes to this. I am getting better. I'll be much better, and I've gotten through it. So just be aware of it when you're going up to high oxygen. If you start feeling faint, it's because of the low oxygen levels, and make sure that if there's before anything serious happens, you go see a medical professional. That's my advice to you. Have fun. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye.